And we're live. So, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Rachel, and from my accent you will spot that I'm French. I think that's really shaping who I am. And I think the reason why it's important for me is because I tend to challenge a lot, to push back, not to like the status quo. And I think that helped me define who I am. I went then to do a PhD in biochemistry. So my background is in research, and I love to keep that mindset of being curious, and that's still who I am today, and I shape how I think about that. I would say who I am, the last point would be maybe that I'm a mom of two, and I think this is really important because your kids are really good at holding the mirror up and making sure that you walk the walk and not just talk.
I'm not a mother, but I've been a nanny and a big sister, and young children, no filters.
They will say it as they see it, but when they're young, there's no malice. So it's probably one of the most truthful mirrors that can get held up to you.
Yeah, the just-in-time feedback that helps you be at your best all the time. Yeah, definitely that. And you ask what I do. So currently I'm a head of people experience for a logistic company, and that's covering a couple of elements. Operational training to start with, leadership and talent development, engagement, so how people think, feel and perceive the culture, but also internal communication. I've got a very interesting role in my team looking after the rep sales.
How did we first connect?
It was a very interesting one because we both work at the same company, an automotive company. And actually the first time we met was for your exit interview. And from that moment on, it was a really interesting point when I thought, what could we do to make people as candid, open and honest about the experience at work, but not waiting until the last moment? And I was gutted basically because I knew we were losing a big talent. And it was, how can I leverage that story to make sure that it never happens again? So yes, that's how we met.
I do remember that conversation over coffee when I got invited to the meeting, and I was saying, I don't think they want to hear what I have to say. And you were saying, that's exactly why you need to say it. So I did.
Yes, and I tried to use that and leverage that as much as I could. So, and I tend to think that it made little difference for few individuals, and that's already a big win.
And that's perfect segue into the next question of how have you changed your corner of the world?
So that was a tricky question because I felt like maybe I'm changing one individual at a time, and I thought maybe that's not enough of a story, but thinking about it, I think it does. What I try to do is shift and reframe the way people think about issues. And I'm thinking about managers, for example, trying to make them think about, most of the time we're reflecting on what our people in our teams don't do. What about thinking about what are the things they actually do and why they do it? So it's having that reframe. And at the same time for employees, it's much more along the line of, what is my role in the company? How do I fit in? What are my strengths and how can I help people to play at their strengths? And I've got example in the past of people in my team actually where they came into, for example, learning development, and I could see this person really was looking at planning, organizing, and little by little we had this conversation. She didn't feel like she was belonging to learning, and through conversation we made her move to project management, and she really thrived for that. And I think this is what I love about it and how I make the change. It's a little bit like and I know you're into martial arts, but it's a bit like Aikido. As opposed to try to push hard to make people do something, why don't you, a company, take the energy in to make them thrive in their own way? And that's a massive benefit for the company if you think about it, because it's about the cost in recruitment are going down. You're having and keeping you retaining your staff, and you make them happy, because I really believe that people are waking up to a great job, not to sabotage what they do in the company. So that's how I think I'm trying to reframe the environment.
And that's a big part of why I started the Change League, taking people's transferable skills and getting them to where they need to be, where they get to use the skills they want to use, because those people are going to come up with solutions that no one else is going to do, or they're going to slog through the bits that everyone else will be like, please don't make me do that. And these guys are like, give me that challenge. I want to take that on and make it mine. So what's next?
So for me, there's a big thing at the moment. And again, the question you ask are really thoughtful because I struggle with them to start with, because I never stop and think. And I think this was a very good exercise. And for me, it was about high performance culture. How do I define that? And this is one of the big steps at the moment in my work is people think about it in different ways, in different things to different people. And I think what we're struggling with is to perceive it as something that has to be on all the time. Employees have to be always on. I'm struggling with that because I think we need to find a way to make it more sustainable and making sure that, yes, we are supporting and making sure people can perform, but not all the time, and we've got those right mechanisms. So what do we mean by that? That might be the next step.
And what's the biggest hurdle between you and getting that?
I think it's the perception. So if I'm using an example is, rather than asking, is this person a high potential? I think it's much more along the line of, do they have the tools and the system to perform? So it's shifting the mindset on the responsibilities on the individual and changing the contract to the responsibility is a mutual one from the individual and the organization. I'm struggling with the fact that it would seem more and more companies where we take the example of sports elite and etc. and we see those people performing highly all the time. What we are forgetting is they're not performing all the time. They've got moments where they train, they've got rest, and then they're ready to high perform.
Yeah, that's a thing as an off season for athletes. That's why they can go as they go. Formula One car does not drive as long or as hard as, I don't know, the Renault Clio that you see around the city. They are not made for the same thing. They are not treated in the same way.
But also, I feel, for me, it's as if you were asking people to run a marathon without any ending. So yeah.
I'm aware of that because that's the feedback I give people of whenever you take a project, if you're not quite sure if it's right for you, you need to ask, okay, what will I get out of doing it? And how long will I want to maintain this state for? Doing my degree was one of them. I would not go do that mechanical engineering degree tomorrow if I didn't already have one.
Yes.
But that 4 years was, okay, there's a finish line. And so you pace yourself, but without it, it's very difficult.
Absolutely.
And next question, something that has changed your mind in the last month.
So I would be cheating. It was maybe in the last 2 months, actually. I was invited by a friend of mine to a conference in London. And this guy was talking about the care economy. He just released a book called The Care Economy. I'm going to be honest, if I'd seen that book on the shelves, I probably wouldn't have taken it out and read it. His name is Tim Jackson, and actually he completely changed the way I'm seeing things, and it makes sense. He talks about how we need to find more balance. So it's related to what we are talking about high performers. We're always trying to have more. If you look at the economy and how we measure economy, we've got GDP, we always want to have more profit. Actually, what he's saying is if we ever look at the world around us, everybody's striving, even our own body is striving for balance. And it's how do we redefine that? Having this new contract about actually, rather than talking about wealth, how can we talk about health? So that's something that really changed my mind because it's really about how do we talk, therefore, about high performance culture. And I think that's one of the things that really, changed the way I think.
And what is the change you most want to see in the world?
I think it is relating to the big buzz around AI at the moment, and it's a focus more on the individual and making sure we have more social interaction, that relationships are less transactional and much more human and authentic. And actually what we start to see, and I've read an article earlier on the fact that some of the brands now are actually advertising it's no AI, and actually it can feel a bit tacky, but it's more about authenticity, how people come through and how you would connect, those real connection. So I think that's what I want to see.
What is something that never fails to change your mood?
So there are two things, but one I can do in the UK. One thing, I love to go to the Alps and walk there because you feel so small and that everything is put in perspective. But the one thing I'm doing in the UK is fencing. And that's for me every time. Sometimes I feel really tired. My husband pushes me and say, go because you feel so good after that. And it's the community, is the physical, the emotional. So that's what really lifts me. Even talking about it.
Yeah, we're both grinning ear to ear because you're thinking of your fencing club, thinking of the martial arts community. There is something in that kind of camaraderie, and that even if you do nothing else that day, if you've gone to training,
you feel like you're on top of the world for the rest of the day. Even if you're sore, if you're achy, it was
feels
worth it.
good.
It felt good to go through that.
Yeah.
And finally, your change of pace question. How have your role models evolved through your life?
So this one I find really interesting because I've always been looking at the big Nobel Prize because I started in research and I wanted the Marie Curie that kind of really wanted to have that big impact, or even more lately.
What Nobel icon or role model?
But also people like Satya Nadella, for example, when he took over Microsoft and talked about the C in CEO stands for culture. And I thought, wow, yes, this is. And actually, the more, maybe it's aging as well, but I feel I'm more grounded and close attuned to my values. And I feel like now the people that are more my role model is the people around me. So a friend of mine who's actually built her own business, is looking after her people. So that's one of the key role models. Somebody also who I met who had a big position in one of the big brands, in a big sport company, who actually gave up, resigned because of her integrity and her values. And those are the people that are much more my role model now, as opposed to the big thing or the big achievement. Yeah, I think that are more the local people.
Lovely to hear. And as always, lovely to speak with you, Rachel. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.